and the founder of the Israel Wine Collection, IWC. Many are probably wondering what the connection to wine and combating anti-Semitism is. So, the Wine Diplomacy Israel Wine Collection was founded into the idea that Israel is heritage, its history, and it's the people behind it. And wine is part of our history, of our heritage, and of our culture, and our economical pillar. So the wine and the people behind it are essential and crucial, such as the startup nation is representing us in the world. We are looking at the world and saying, this is our wine diplomacy, and we want to share our story from a different narrative and from the people behind it. Today, we have an incredibly amazing panel of people, and I'm really, really excited to share and introduce all these people that are here and to share our story tonight and our topics. So let's welcome, firstly, we have Yael Ben-Zvi, CEO
Hi.
and owner of Water Phyto and Ofra Aqua Designer, researcher and builder of nature-based solutions for polluted water. Hello, Yael.
Hi.
Next, we have Professor Eliashiv Drori, Shivi Drori, Professor, PhD, faculty member at the Department of Chemical Engineering, head of Grape and Vine and Wines Research Center at Ariel University, and winemaker. Hi, Shivi.
Hi, everyone.
Then we have Yaakov Uriah, winemaker of Pinto Winery and the Yaakov Uriah Winery, expert in desert winemaking and desert enology and viticulture. Welcome, everybody. I'm very excited about this panel. Shivi and Yaakov, this is not the first time we meet together at a panel that I'm moderating. Last time we met in 2022 in Dubai at the expo, and it was a blast. So I'm happy to invite you again.
Our
Today's
pleasure.
topic, as always, I want today to talk about, first of all, history. As we all know, Israel has quite a legacy and a heritage. A couple of thousands of years ago, the first recognition that we have is in the Bible of Noah, who was the first wine grower and viticulture enologist that is written and recorded in history. We have Moses and the spies that came from Mount Sinai into Israel with a cluster of grapes. And of course, we have King David, who had two sommeliers in his court and his and his mansion. So we have a history of winemaking throughout the Bible days, and well, we all can talk about it a bit more. But I want to start with you, Shivi, and your research. I want you to tell us a little bit of what you do and about the connection of the vine in the history and its effects on today. So, Shivi, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'll take you back 11,000 years. 11,000 years ago, grapevine was first domesticated in the South Levant, which is actually Israel, Syria, and Lebanon. This is a new insight into grapevine domestication. It was actually published in 2023. Before that, we all believed that the grapevine started only in the Caucasus area and spread from there all over the world. Today, we know that following our very long research about the Israeli grapevines and both the domesticated form, which are the grapes we know and eat, and the wild form, which most of us don't know, but they are very tiny black grapes and they grow feral in the wilds. After collecting a big population in Israel, we found out that let's say the evolution of grape domestication actually started here. And from here, it spread all over the world and made the varieties we know today as the French varieties, the Spanish varieties, and so on. So Israel is a very central part of, I would say, the creation of the grape world as we know it.
So basically, those grapes started here, and also we had a great export industry here, correct?
Yeah, so if we move forward a few thousand years, grapes were started to be processed into wines, and the wines from the land of Israel, from the Holy Land, were considered of the best quality. The wines of later on, during the Roman periods and the Byzantine periods, it actually became a very important commodity. It was the main basis for the foundation, I would say, for the population, and the people used to export it. It's very special vessels that can still be found in many excavations all over the world. And the abundance of wine presses all over Israel, we're talking about thousands of them, is a testimony to the amazingly big industry that used to be here, and people were actually living wine, growing wine, and drinking wine.
We have actually found one of the biggest Byzantine era archaeology finding of a winery in Yavne in Israel, with a proof that they have produced about approximately 2 million bottles only in this winery at that period.
Right. So it's not just, it was an amazing infrastructure. It's not just a winery. They also had a place to build and burn the amphoras. They had the whole facility there to produce everything that was needed to actually produce the wines, to produce the vessels. It's like a winery in Israel now will have a bottle factory inside it. So it's quite amazing. It's a huge industrial area that was all dedicated to wine, and they produced a huge amount of wines that were exported all over the world through probably Ashkelon and Gaza ports.
They were actually also named the vessels Ashkelon Gaza vessels. Right. And they had a very, very unique shape of like a clam, and it is really a big, huge industry. And so the topic for today is that the world is warming. We know that. But Israel is a warm place. And so we have also historically and also nowadays an advantage and something that we can teach maybe the world, and through our experience show how to deal with extreme climate or use it to our advantage. So I want to take this one to you, Yaakov, because you are also Shivi, but also Yaakov, you are a winemaker focusing on the Negev in the desert, which is going to be the first ever appellation that is a desert appellation in the world. So there's no other appellation in the world that is completely only desert driven. And so I know that there used to be, throughout history, we have evidence that the wine production were used with stone so that the stone would absorb the water, and the water then would have the hail in the morning. So today, what is happening in the desert? Tell us a little bit.
Well, the problems that they were addressing in ancient times have more to do with survival of the vine. As far as we could tell from what we see today, we have no idea of the style of the wine that they made. Was it semi-sweet? Was it high alcohol, low alcohol? Was it skin macerated, not skin macerated? All that we don't know. The evidence that we have really have to do with collecting water, which they took the riverbeds and they built terraces from it to allow the water to settle down into the deep soil, and they made rock formations around the vines to collect the dew. Today we don't have those problems. Today we desalinate seawater, and we take it by pipe, and we just irrigate. So the challenges that they have, we solved a long time ago. Challenges that we have today in the desert are really of a stylistic question, because the extreme conditions that the desert provides makes a unique wine. It has a fingerprint on the wine, and not necessarily the common style of what people are used to drinking. And to make a wine that's acceptable to the modern palate is a challenge. But I don't know if that's anything related to what they dealt with in the past. Today we have our own challenges.
I just want to say to the people that are listening to us that they might be surprised to know that the desert is a very hot place during the day, but it does get snow during the winter and it gets really cold during the night. Is that true?
Yes, of course. Because we're far from any sea body, so when the night falls, the temperatures drop dramatically and quickly.
And I think people could be very surprised to see a vineyard in the desert covered with snow. I think that is something that is not the common first thoughts that comes to your head. So, Yaakov, when you see the challenges that come with these extreme climates, what are you facing today and how are you dealing with it, as you say?
Well, if you go to the literature about winemaking around 100 years ago, our region was barely suitable for wine to begin with, and certainly not the southern part of Israel. We were considered an area for liqueur wine, for wine of high alcohol, dessert wine, and that's what they thought we were able to do. And when we're trying in Israel in general to make table wines and quality wines, we are not in the ideal climate to begin with in all of Israel. And when you go down to the south, it's of course much more extreme. You're closer to the equator. You have stronger radiation. You have return radiation from the white soil with no vegetation. And you have very quick ripening, which might be an advantage if you're looking for acids and might be a disadvantage if you're looking for flavor. So you have to learn how to deal with that.
So we have, for those who are not necessarily wine experts, we have the grapes that have the sugar, and the sugar becomes then alcohol. And when the fruit is, when the grape is, when you harvest early, you have less sugar and more acidity, correct? And when you harvest later, you have more sugar, more intensity, more ripeness, more body, and more thickness to the wine. I want to go to Yael now because we were talking a lot about the water and about the hail and the dew in the morning. So please tell us what you do in your line of work and how you meet with wine.
Well, we are in a point in history that a few processes are meeting together. We have the global warming, we have the scarcity of water, we have growing awareness to sustainability, and also there's value and financial value in sustainability and in avoiding the greenhouse gases. And all that, this is combining together when we are trying to treat the wastewater of wineries and distilleries in a constructed wetland. Because first of all, the wastewater of this production is highly difficult to treat. It has high organic contact, it has high nutrients, it has very low pH, high TSS, which is suspended particles. And usually, if you just let it go to the sewage, you are probably going to have heavy fines. So there's a financial drive to find a different solution.
Can you tell us a little bit before the wine, what is it that you do exactly in your work? Because this is very interesting and I'm very excited to have you here. So I think everybody wants to know what it is exactly that you do with water and then how you combine it with wine in Israel and globally and how you see the difference.
Well, what we're doing is actually constructing constructed wetlands, which are taking natural processes, engineer them, intensify them, and also tailor-make them, because you need to find a very specific solution to a very specific place, sort of wastewater, what you want to do with the treated water. So there isn't any system that is similar to another. And we have spent the last 30 years doing a lot of research with a lot of academic institutes and with Mekorot, the Israeli water company. And we have specialized in some areas. And and wineries is one of them. We were working first a few years ago with the Taurus conglomerate, doing some work with them. We even had
for our guests, is it Spanish winery, one of the largest Spanish wineries in Europe.
Yeah. So we even had our offices and nurseries within the vineyard in Spain. And in Israel now, we are doing a few projects with the support of the Israeli Innovation Authority, which is supporting this sort of thing. And for the wineries and distilleries that are going to this program, it's first of all a way of life and a belief. They don't do it only for financial purposes.
Yeah.
Also, it is they believe that their customers are with very high awareness of this, so it's a marketing thing as well. But also, for example, in one of the wineries, we are going to build the wetland on the roof of the barrel area to have less fluctuation in temperature and to reduce the use of both air conditioning and humidifiers, and to have this as a more constant area, which has value by itself. Also, we are going to use the water for irrigation. The system has an ability to create almost every quality of water, depending on what you design and how much you want to invest. But technically, we can get very, very good water in areas that water is very scarce. So we have very different advantages from all around. In Israel, I'm afraid we don't have climate laws, so there are no fines of CO2 emittance. But wetland is a very, very effective way to reduce greenhouse gases, because it has a full scale of treatment. So everything that is volatile is a non-greenhouse gas. For example, we are not volatilizing N2O, which is 265 more of a greenhouse gas than CO2, but we are emitting N2, which is completely harmless. So in areas where there are laws about it, this is a very good financial model as well.
Yeah, I'm curious of what you guys think, Shivi and Yaakov, of her work and how important it is to combine it in your work.
Yaakov, you can start.
It's something we're looking into. The truth is that the technology that's available today is too expensive for a small or even medium-sized winery. In big scale, it becomes worthwhile, but right now we're looking for more regional solutions, because it's not something that we could handle by ourselves, even though we definitely would love to.
It's not necessarily true. There's some truth in that. I'm not trying to say this is easy thing or cheap things, but first of all, there is a support from the government, which of course is important. And also we need to look at the specific needs, because if you only needed to have your wastewater go to the regional wastewater treatment plant without any fines, that's really reasonable to do. If you want to have the water for irrigation, and that means having very high quality of water, then you're right, it may be too expensive.
Interesting. Shivi, before we spoke with Yaakov about the wine production that was here many years ago, let's say 100 years ago, but we were talking about 11,000, but let's go 100 years back and talk about the wine that was produced here. It was port-like, sweet-like, and there was also this big event. It was a diplomatic event where we call the wine port, and it's not allowed because it's not from Portugal, from Porto, but it used to be sweet wine, and we are guessing that the wines were very sweet, and mostly the population was drinking wine because water was not safe to drink, so we combined wine with water. What made the grapes survive here in this climate? And what is the change? Is it the change in the winemaking style and the winemakers in understanding the soil? But from your research, in this hot climate that is not adjusted for wine, it's not France, it's not Burgundy, it's not Germany. How did the grapes here survive? Who are the strong ones? And how does it look today with indigenous grapes? Ooh, we see that Shivi doesn't have the best of connection. And that was a good question, so I want the answer. Let's see if we have if we have Shivi. Your connection is unstable a bit.
I'm sorry, I have problem with the connectivity.
Okay, we have you
Let me
back.
see. Just a minute. The computer or the connectivity on my computer.
Yeah, we hear you great. So while you were working on that, Jakob, do you have something to answer to that? Do you work with indigenous grapes at all?
No, actually, Shivi is one of the biggest experts in the world in Israeli indigenous grapes. His research is incredible, and actually, besides discovering, University of Ariel is doing a long project of cleaning the vines from viruses, so they will be available to for us. I'm waiting for that. For the point where he says it's healthy, you can have it.
So you're waiting for Shivi to do his work. So you
That's right.
I'm back online. So I guess you asked about the indigenous varieties. We
I
actually
asked, what in this climate, how your research shows that they survive here so many years. How did they do it? And what is so special about them? Tell us everything.
okay. So the Israeli varieties are, first of all, very different from what we are used to make wine from in Europe. Let's say the European Bordeaux styled varieties or the Italian varieties. Our varieties are very different. You could argue that many of them are actually table grapes. But in the 100 or so varieties that we collected and are growing in our collections, which are two today. One is in Ariel and the second one is in Neot Kdumim, near Modi'in. We have a very nice amount of wine grapes, which have smaller bunches, smaller berries, and higher content of sugar and acids. Sometimes, if they're red, they should have also high coloration and good tastes. And I would say that in the next 5 years, I believe that we will already have 12 varieties ready for planting. We already have 4 of them in the nurseries. The reason for the I would say the slowliness of returning them to grow is because we have to clean them from viruses and pathogens that were, I would say, accumulated during the long years that they were neglected and they were in the wild or even in growth by traditional populations here in Israel, like the Druze, the Arabs, and so on. But they accumulated a lot of viruses. If you want to put them into modern nurseries, we have to clean them from viruses, and also understand their actual wine potential. So that takes some time, but we already have 4 varieties out, and this year hopefully 2 or 3 more. We already have very good results for 2 additional varieties. One of them is a very, very good red variety called Ashkelon because it was found on the sands of Ashkelon. And indeed, I would say that after analyzing the whole collection for drought stress, which means lack of water, we actually closed the water for 2 months during summertime. We found out that some of the varieties can cope very, very good with highly, I would say, very high drought. So you could say that even though the ground was very, very dry, these varieties did not collapse. They still could continue the ripening of the fruit. And they are very, very interesting for not just for Israel, but as I would say, the vanguard for the whole world of wine that are looking with tearly eyes on the global warming, and they're really afraid of what's going to happen when the whole world will become much warmer in about 30, 40 years by the models. We all hope that the models will be found false, but if they will be found correct, and we will have a warming of about 3, 4 degrees, that would change a lot of what's going on today in Europe, and they will have much less rain, and additional areas will become desertous, and then they will have to deal with drought stress. They already have. I've been in Italy 2 or 3 years ago, and I saw dried vines and actually grapes that are drying on the vines. And they are starting to understand that irrigation is something that is really, really coming necessary. And they are looking also on dripping system, which Israel is definitely in the forefront of.
So we're talking about a few things. Also, the expertise of wine growing in really warm areas and dry areas such as the desert and Israel in general, the south, but also we're talking about grapes themselves, the variety themselves. Indigenous grapes, to the ones who don't know, are grapes that are grown solely and originated from the land, meaning these grapes that Shivi is talking about, like the Marawi, the Ashkelon, the Bituni, these type of grapes are from Israel, and the DNA is originated in Israel. So we're looking at grape varieties that the world would want to grow themselves because they are strong and know how to deal with this climate. We can also see Mediterranean grapes such as the Grenache that we start using here more and more, the Chenin Blanc that is growing in the desert beautifully, which is a French variety originated. But we see that also the experience and also the grape itself, and also, of course, dealing with the water, which Yael, I would be happy to hear more about the Torres winery and how they're learning from your experience here in Israel. And I know that they're expanding in general, and a lot of wineries in Europe are looking for different places around the world to grow their grapes. Yael, you're muted, so we need to unmute you.
Sorry. Actually, Taurus is really very much environmentally, I would say, advanced and looking far ahead. I remember they told me when I first met them that they're buying a lot of land in frozen areas in South America so they can grow there in 50 years. So they're planning ahead. Sorry about that. I have too many dogs.
Dogs is good. We love dogs.
And actually, they are introducing drip irrigation everywhere now in the vineyards, which weren't necessary before and are necessary now. They're also planting new grapes in higher elevations, but also they're trying to have a sustainable treatment of the wastewater. They started with the Jean Leon winery, which belongs to them and is more of a boutique winery as a sort of taste case. But they're definitely going to enlarge that to a much bigger wineries as well.
Interesting. So I want to talk to you, Yaakov. To those who don't know, Yaakov, he talked about style and fingerprints. And I think that Yaakov is the first one in Israel, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're the first one that played with styles in a way that nobody else did. Meaning you're the first one to play with skin contact in white wines and produce the first orange style wines. And if you don't know, then the best dessert wine in Israel, and I'm signing on it today, is Yaakov's Viognier Late Harvest. And your style is very particular and very different, and there's a lot to learn from it. You talked about a fingerprint of the desert and about these areas of wine production. Can you tell a bit more? What does that mean?
Sure. When you have an early harvest, you have a lack of maturation of the skin and the phenolic flavors, and you have very, I would say, underripe acids, which are intense acidity. So in your white wine, when you would naturally throw away the skins and just make wine from the juice, the desert and its early harvest could actually be an advantage because if you correct that if you acidify wines because you lost acids in the breathing process, then you will usually correct it with a one-dimensional tartaric acid. And what you lose is not just tartaric, you're losing a complex of acids. So if you are able to maintain your original acids, you have a much more interesting wine. That's in a white wine. In a red wine, if you harvest a technical harvest when your sugars are at the level that you don't want them to go beyond, you're usually in hot climates not going to have a full phenolic maturation of the grape itself. And then you're some kind of compromise. Where do you want to draw the line between too much alcohol and not enough flavors? And it's really a personal decision, and that's true in all hot regions. I would say that in the desert, it's to that extreme that what I do is I break down the harvest in each plot to 2 or 3 harvests to get different profiles from the grape, from the same harvest. Eventually, they all meet in the same wine, but I will get a fresh profile from an early harvest and a fuller profile and higher alcohol with the later harvest. And if you combine the two, you could theoretically and practically reach some kind of balance, which I don't think is, should be restricted to the desert. It's an approach that I think gives a lot of complexity to wines. I think it should be used in every hot region. I mean, I have to do it, but other places will just benefit from it.
That's a good idea, actually. So basically, you're speaking of harvesting for the same wine, early harvest combined with later harvest to get also the freshness and also the flavor, which is incredible idea and can be used, as you said, everywhere, not only in the deserts.
I want to add that it's not only that. I mean, that's part of it. I also play around with some of the vineyard. I leave the grapes exposed to the sun, which breaks down the growing hormone of pyrazine, and you get more black fruit. And some of these I use the foliage to the leaves, the canopy to cover the grapes, and I get more green and red fruits. And I could also play with yields and concentration. And really, from one vineyard, you could get 6 profiles that complement each other, and you can put them together and get a real lovely complex wine, even though you're growing them in a hot region, which should give you theoretically poor wines.
That's really interesting. And Shivi, he's also not only a professor or researcher, he's also a winemaker for Gvaot Winery. So you're also specializing in the desert, indigenous grapes, but also a winemaker. Can you tell us a little bit of your experience and the difference between your terroir, which is more in the Judea appellation?
First of all, I was a part of a very big research team that started analyzing a very big collection of grape varieties in the Negev, in 2 regions in the Negev. One is very low and hot. The second is in Mitzpe Ramon, which is very high. And first of all, I was really amazed that some of the European varieties can do very well at the lower part of the Negev, not just the higher part. And that was really shocking for me. Some varieties like Pinot, like Petit Verdot, like Chenin Blanc, Petit Syrah, muscats can do very, very well, even in very, very high climates and saline soils. But definitely the style is very, very different. From one of the interesting things that we published a few years back showed that uh, grapes or wines that come from the Negev, grapes that grow in the Negev and wines that are produced there, have much, much lower content of phenolics, meaning they have less tannin and less structure to them. And in addition, they have less resveratrol, which is one of the most interesting compounds, giving longer lifespans and so on. So definitely, the composition of grapes and wines that come from the Negev is different. But style-wise, I would say that these are much less acidic, from what I experienced. But they can make rounder wines. They can make deeper wines. Sometimes even salty wines. So you actually can taste the terroir of the Negev by some kind of a salty spice in the profile of the acids that come into your mouth. And I think that in blind tastings, I can identify the whites, at least, that come from the Negev by that hint of saltiness.
That's truly very interesting. So we have the perfect combination of the future with the water and the winemaking and the research. The three of you together, count me in. We can give that. Do you experience a lot of winemakers abroad that are consulting you or asking you, worried or concerned for advice for the future? Because you probably work with, as I know, with winemakers from abroad.
Yeah, so in my case, I would say that people from all over the Europe mostly are very much concerned, and they see Israel as the forefront of climate change, as the forefront lab, I would say. We experience now what they will experience in about 20 or 30 years. This is how they see it. I really hope we are all falsely stressed, but if the predictions will come true, they will definitely learn a lot from what we do today, and that will definitely include irrigation. They will have to start irrigating soon in Europe, all over climates that are now experiencing summer rains. They might stop having these summer rains, and they will need to start irrigating. And we learn a lot about irrigation in the right way. So in order to actually increase quality and not just the quantity of grapes, because you can have a huge bunch of grapes from a vineyard, but they are not very good. So you'll have inferior wines. But if you irrigate in the right way, you can also maintain the amount of grapes that you want to produce with maintaining the high quality that you want to have in your wine. So that's a very, very important fact. And this is something that we are studying, and we are actually leading. One of my colleagues, Dr. Ishai Netzer, is one of the main leaders of this science in the world.
But you know, Shivi, maybe it's not as long as you say. I remember about 20 years ago, I was lecturing in Bordeaux in a conference, and I was talking about desalination of wells, and I could see that some of the audience is really sleeping. You know, these are the problem of these people there in the Middle East. It's not something that we should be concerned of. And the next year, there was no water in Bordeaux. They had to even stop the water for the houses. And I had all these people calling me and say, can you please repeat what you just said? So this is happening really, really quickly.
Yeah, I agree that rapidness here is frightening, I would say, frightening.
Yeah.
The models are coming through in some cases very fast.
So because we have only 5 minutes left, I see questions from the audience. So are you ready? First of all, hello from Montreal, Canada. Thank you, Christine and Rachel. For sure, I will send you the YouTube. So Alex Zisman is asking also Yaakov and also Shivi. So we'll start with you, Yaakov. What traditional grape varieties have had the greatest potential in the desert agriculture? How long will you take to develop wines with the new grape varieties being produced in Israel? And are you also producing orange wine under those conditions? Are you also contemplating producing dessert wines? So dessert wines, as I said, Yaakov produces, I think, the most phenomenal dessert wines, also orange wines, but take it from here, Yaakov.
Yeah, well, when we were planting our vineyards in the Negev in Yerucham, we had a few principles that were guiding us. One of them is proven success. People planted a bunch of varieties around 15 years ago, and we could see today what was successful and what was not. We have some kind of initial real experience. The second guideline was areas in the world that are arid and the grapes are successful, such as Grenache. We didn't have experience with that, but we know that in Castile Leon and huge areas in Spain, it's arid and the vines do very well. And the third approach was to take a grape that is too big for real life, such as Petit Verdot in hot climates, Petit Syrah, Tanat, all those grapes that are just so muscular. And you assume, just like Shivi said, that in our climate you get less phenolic. So if you get 70% of a monster, it's a good guy. So we like him. So we took those three approaches and we planted. Now, how long does it take to make a wine from that? In my real understanding to what a wine is, that means if you know how to grow it, how to process it, how to mature it, and how to age it, etc., it's around 5 to 10 years. It doesn't mean that during those 5 years we spill the wine. We have a wine, it's drinkable, we like it, you can even sell it and people enjoy it also, but we're on a learning task, and we improve from year to year what we're actually want to achieve and are able to achieve. And after around 5 to 7 years, I think if you planted a variety that at the end works, so after 5 to 7 years, I think you figured it out. Skin maceration is in the Negev is actually an interesting idea. We want to plant bituni. From what we hear, that was one of the grapes that was planted. That was the Nabatim. Grew around 1,500 years ago, and there's a good chance that they made skin macerated wine. So it's something we want to try, but we're still looking for a planting plot for that, experimental one. And dessert wines, yes, besides my private label, I also make dessert wines in the Negev, in Pinto. Didn't release them yet, though.
Okay, we have a few more questions. We're going to be a little bit after our schedule. I'm sorry, but people are very interested here. So we have a question from Dr. Mafatlal Ker Tsiakov. You just said about from a single vineyard, you can get 6 different types of wine. Can you elaborate on how we can produce it? And then we have a question from Argentina, and then we will have to finish for time.
It's not 6 different types of wine. There's 6 different profiles of the same wine. Let's say you take one varietal and you use the leaves to cover to shade the clusters. And another part of the vineyard, you expose it. So you actually have 2 different fruit profiles just from the behavior of the sun with or without the leaves. Another aspect is the yield. If you have part of our vineyard, we grow according to desired volume, yield, and part of it we grow with the principle of 1 cluster per shoot, which is actually around 2/3 of the regular growth, but the concentration there is crazy. And saying all that, and you break that, right now we have 4 profiles, and if you make from each of those an early harvest and a ripe harvest, you have 8 profiles. And if you vinify them each separately, you're actually making at the end, you will be making a blend of 8 components, which are actually the same varietal from the same vineyard, but each of them gives a different aspect of the potentials of the grape. And if you combine them, you have a complex wine.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, now to Shivi from Alex Ziesman. How does the desert agriculture is likely to affect the longevity of wines? Do you think that the vines would be long-lasting in the desert?
So basically, when we look at aging of wine, we want to have a few parameters, one of which is the level of phenolics. And as I said, phenolic levels in desert-grown wines, at least in Israel, are lower than what you have in other areas, and most importantly, in the higher mountainous areas in Israel, which are cooler. And in that aspect, you can actually expect the wines from the Negev or the desert to have less of a lifespan, and they could be aged maybe, but for a lesser length than the ones that grow in higher areas, which can have higher extraction and higher phenolics. But that does not mean that you cannot find very, I would say, delicious wines coming from the Negev, and some which can actually be aged for a few years at least, maybe even 10 years. I don't have the experience with aging Negev wines, but as I would say, as a prediction, I would say that they have less of aging potential.
I have to say that one of my biggest surprises at a blind wine tasting with 12 sommeliers, we drank a Pinot Noir from the desert, and we all thought it's a Pinot or Gamay from France, we were shocked. It was really, for us, mind-blowing. A Pinot Noir that tasted like a young, fresh Gamay from France. We were sure it's not from Israel. So last, I'm going to read to you from Michelle Elbaum from Argentina. She's a sommelier. And here in Argentina, we are studying our own indigenous grapes, proven to be more resistant to diseases. Also scaling in altitude in Argentina, it was possible only to Israeli development and technology. So thank you for the Israeli technology and development. And finally, a question: how do you think here we can be ambassadors of Israeli wine, since we do not have a possibility of tasting? Well, Michelle, let's talk after this, and we'll make sure we'll get you some Israeli wine.
Yeah, that's your job.
That is my job. That is true. I'm responsible for that. So I want to thank all of you. I feel very honored and privileged to have colleagues and friends like you. And I feel that we are in safe hands with Yael, Shivi, and Yaakov together. And I'm learning from you every day. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your knowledge. I'm really very happy learning something new every time. Thank you to everybody who joined us, and we'll make sure it's not the last time.